Pickaxe.
Hello and welcome to the Chance Encounters podcast. This one's a slightly different podcast today. Whilst we still have been trading and operating around the UK with board game cafes and recommending lots of games, this podcast is going to be slightly different. It's an in-between series one where we also get to crown the Titan of board games. Were you in a choir? That was delightful.
Did you do
the voice of an
Halo?
owl was nice. That's what they call me.
Amazing.
Were you part of the Halo choir?
Yeah. So, welcome in. Thank you for coming and bearing with us. Today we are joined by myself. I'm the one talking, Richard Scarsbrook. I'm one of the co-founders of Chance Encounters. I've been with it for about 6 years and I like lots of board games. I'm a big ass nerd and pretty much everything. I've grown up being a nerd. As with everybody pretty much here. But I'm joined by my co-host, Ben.
I am Ben. I stream and make video game videos with the Yogscast. I'm a massive nerd. And I can't get that Halo tune out of my head now.
This is such a great game. And we are also joined by one of the reoccurring gurus on this segment. We've got Russ.
Hello, I'm Russell. I have many board games. I also am the head of games at Chance Encounters Bristol, and I also run my own stuff under a really cool name. It's not as good as Chance Encounters, but it's called For Chits and Giggles.
Dun dun
It's
dun.
pretty good.
It's all about the puns.
secret identities.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm also, goes without saying, a huge nerd, and so.
Do we have?
I feel like
it becomes
it's become a
ubiquitous at
thing
this
now.
point.
Yeah, I don't want him to think.
you a big
I don't
nerd?
want people
I'm a
to
big
think
nerd.
that Ben's a big nerd and I'm not. Like that doesn't
Oh,
seem fair.
right. Yeah,
Like,
by not saying anything, you're
by not
admitting
clarifying
that I'm
it,
the biggest nerd.
Yeah, and I can't let that stand. You know how competitive I am. So.
Exactly.
I feel like being on your own board games podcast already puts you at a certain level of nerdom.
That's true. That's true. And our fourth and final guest for this entire season is the one you've probably heard their dulcet tones the most, and they've also been the most victorious as well. Dickie Jones.
I'm Dickie. I am a forlorn spoonerism enthusiast, and I am very secure in my nerdiness. Thank you.
Ooh,
You don't need to
shots
prove
fired.
how big a nerd you are.
No, just prove it in my everyday life. Yep.
It's true. Live it.
Show, don't tell.
Exactly. That's what we were taught.
Yeah,
We're definitely doing a lot of telling and showing at this point. So it's going to take a slightly different format. We're going to go over a few questions that we kind of wanted to ask this season, but never found an appropriate point. The first one is going to be about, well, unsurprisingly, board games and ones that we personally enjoy the most. So I'll put it out to you guys. Which board game have you played that's new to you, let's say, and maybe the last 12 months for some arbitrary time constraints? What that you really like, that you think maybe didn't come up on the podcast, but you've played it recently and you really, really liked?
Someone else start. I'm still thinking.
Sure.
Sorry.
It's probably going to come up. We're not saying games that we can't use in the future,
absolutely
right?
not.
Like, okay, so spoiler alert. I played a game recently, which was really fun. It's a very light game. It's very nicely styled. It's actually a republished version of a game that originally existed called Let's Make a Bus Route, which is a Japanese game. Very cute sounding already, and it is really good. And it's called Get On Board, and it's a bus route game. So think a little bit like, Ticket to Ride, in that you've got like a map with little like destinations and routes between them. But instead of like set routes which you're claiming, essentially you're all starting at different points in this map, and you're going to be driving around by putting these little wooden sticks in your color around the board, trying to collect different passengers. There's two versions of the two maps depending on the number of players. So you can either do it in London, in quaint old London, or like busy New York. And you're just going to be going around trying to pick up passengers and drop them off where they want to go. And the way that it's done is that there's these it's like a deck of cards with a letter on and letters on, and then you turn it over and everybody looks at their sheet. So everyone's got their own little sheet, like a roll. It's a roll and write game, a flip and write game. and then they're going to look at their sheet and it's going to tell them which directions they're going to go. So then they have to choose basically to go, not direction. Sorry, I'm making this very convoluted, but it's more like which shape you're going to place onto the grid. And then you place it on, hopefully you'll pick up a passenger, hopefully you'll score some like points by dropping them off and getting like a bonus. And it's very cute. It's very easy to teach. And it's really nicely designed as well. And I think there's something to be said for this day and age in modern board games. We do kind of expect at least the minimum of like a game to look good. It doesn't have to look the best game ever because there's a lot of games competing for that. But at least the game should be approachable and nicely presented, and obviously very important, have a nice, easy to distinguish like kind of iconography. You've got to kind of know a little bit about what that thing does, that thing on the board. What does that mean? Without it getting too convoluted and have to like check the rules. And I think this game does tick a lot of those boxes, and it can be played in like about half an hour, I'd say. Really good little game.
Cool.
I've got one I have played twice this year, and it's blown me away. And I am really surprised because normally I stay the farthest as I can away from anything that's like big on a hype train at the minute. I'm like something that this has really lived up to the hype for me. It's Ark Nova. I think it's wonderful. I think it's really good. Reminds me a lot of Terraforming Mars, kind of one of your games.
Nice.
But it's got the same kind of shonky art feel to it, as well as Terraforming Mars, which is great. But it ticks all my boxes. It's got tableau building, it's got cool animals and like really niche animals as well. I'm like, where else am I going to see a secretary bird in board games? It's great.
I've seen them in real life. They're so impressive.
They are, but like it's very different in time length to yours. It's kind of it's a definite like 4 hour. It's a big game. It really is. But like it's very rare that I lose a game as badly as I've lost Ark Nova, and I'm so enthusiastic to play it again.
Wow.
I absolutely have tanked both plays of this.
It's funny that you should mention the art though, because I've seen the board game, and I Ark Nova. I guess it's probably in the title. But when I've looked at it, I'm like, I expected it to be a completely different game to about animals. It seems strange.
Like I do think the name is not as good as it could be, but the game itself is just utterly. It's kind of bewitching. Like I kind of like get into it, and it's got this really nice mechanic where your actions get stronger the more you don't take them. So you kind of got to find the perfect time to take an action, which is really nice. And there's kind of like little breaks in the game where you score and things will happen. And the feeling of having something taken away from you at the last minute because the break happens, it is absolutely infuriating when it happens to you, but when you do it to someone else, it's the sweetest feeling. It really is. But yeah, I mean, it's blown me away this year. Really.
All right, wow.
Yeah.
Was there anything that you had particularly that you played?
Okay, yeah, I played something this year that is not necessarily the most like revolutionary or top game of the year, but it really scratched an itch that I could no longer scratch. So I played Summoner Wars 2nd edition. Which is it's a card game in a fantasy setting where you have like a grid and you put monsters down on the grid and you battle the other person's monsters. So it's a little bit like Magic the Gathering, but with a board. And I used to play a lot of Magic the Gathering and other sort of collectible card games, but to keep up with those games is a massive commitment of like time and money that I can't afford anymore. So it was really nice to be able to play a self-contained game that didn't require me to spend hours constructing a deck or loads of time like reading up on the meta or like worrying about what the other person's, how much time and effort they put into their deck. It's just straight out of the box. Oh, I'll be the knights or the skeletons or the elves or whatever. There's like 6 races in there, and it takes like 20 minutes to do a battle.
Nice.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, it's just like that sort of like fantasy card game. It's just like perfectly scratching that itch. I can get like 2 or 3, do a best of 3 in less than an hour, and have my little skeleton minions like running along the board. It's really fun.
Is that the publisher that did? Is it White Wizard?
Plaid Hat Games.
Plaid Hat Games
does it.
Plaid Hat.
Yeah. I liked that game. I played the original version, and like it's cool because each race does play quite differently, and that's similar to a game I like that in a game, which I recommended on the previous episode, which was Unmatched. And the fact that every character has their own style of play, and I really like that in games where you can go, you've got the box, and you can just pair up these different races or characters, and it just feels like you're playing a slightly different game. Doesn't get boring, it doesn't get repetitive, and then each pairing up is like a new puzzle to solve.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Because I've only probably played about 8 times now, but I've played like one of the races like 3 times, but each time I played against a different race, and it has felt totally different, because now I'm like, oh, well, this power of mine is not particularly strong in this scenario, but this other power that I didn't use very much last game is now really useful. Cool. It's fun.
The first edition was a bit of a grail game in the cafe in the early years that we just couldn't get a hold of through our suppliers at all. And it was always on the list of like top things like our manager Kit really, really wanted us to get. And it's so nice to now see that the second edition has come out and people can actually get hold of it again.
I've never played the first edition. I don't know how much it's changed since then. But
me neither, actually. I got to be honest. It could be really bad. And I played I don't know.
Excellent. Well, the game that I've played recently that I quite enjoyed is just Raiders of the North Sea.
Oh, yeah.
It's been out for a little while. There's like a series of games that they bring out. But basically, if you wanted a reasonably easy entry game with some Vikings and a bit of raiding and pillaging, then it's basically like it scratches that. I mean, we have very different itches here. You're like, I want to be deck building and shuffling them, and then I'm just like, no, I just want to raid and pillage. Totally go get the gold. Someone will go to the Valkyrie. But no, it's a really good one. If you like that as a sort of theme, I think the Raiders do really well. I actually I bought it, but I bought the collector's box version. It turns out it was just a collector's box. It was literally nothing in it. And this is the second time it's happened to me. The first time I did it was Champions of Midgard. I went and bought the Kickstarter version of it. It turns out it was also kind of like just a box.
Is it a box that's extra big that lets you put all the expansions in one box? Because that's actually really nice.
Now, it is useful, but all of the board games are like 60 quid in it, so it's quite an expensive game. It's quite nice. It feels like a small box for 60 quid, but actually it's quality components.
How were you not like surprised at the price? Like price-wise,
I thought I got a bargain. I thought I got a bargain. It's one of those old adages where it's just like, if the price is too good, then it's too good to be true. So I didn't follow it.
My biggest weakness in board games is storage solutions. I will spend far too much on a storage solution. And like when me and my partner got together for the first time, I was so excited because I had I think the best storage solution that there has ever been is for a game called Too Many Bones.
Oh, well,
Trove
if
chest.
by best you mean like premium.
Yes. I mean, the price you pay for it, you've kind of got to think it's the best at that point. But yeah, I mean, I spent like 70 odd quid, like probably more
just on a big box to fit it all.
And it's the exact dimensions of a Kallax cube.
That's a nice touch.
It's glorious. It's wooden, and it's got these drawers that you pull out with a magnetic key, and it just feels epic. It feels wonderful.
I'm not gonna lie. The first time I went around your house, when you literally were like, "Here's the key. Go and check out this storage solution." And I was like, are we going to be playing this game? No, you just literally, you'll enjoy this, Rich. And I'm going to get fair. I actually really did enjoy it.
It is definitely I've played it once actually, but like the game itself is like the shining example of the most premium components I've ever seen in a board game. I've never played a board game that felt so expensive.
Well, it was just Kickstarter, right? And then it was just, we've got all these stretch goals, and then they reached them, and then they just had to produce this ridiculously overly created thing. It was great.
They've started taking pops at themselves in terms of like what they do and their production levels, and each year they do like an April Fool's and then make it. And so I'm currently waiting on a Too Many Bones pop-up book, a playable campaign in pop-up book form, which has got like hidden chips and hidden cards and hidden campaigns kind of like put into the pages themselves.
I feel like those people have far too much time and or money like to be able to do stuff like that. It's just mad.
It's a lovely thing to be obsessed with because they're just like constantly creating stuff for it.
I'm intrigued. Do you feel like you're in so deep now that if they bring out anything, you've got that collector's itch where you're like, I've just got to buy it.
Completionist. You just like, that's it. I've got 90% of all the bits. I guess I've got to buy this new bit too.
Yes, that is the problem I have with almost everything. I'm a completionist, and it pains me. But yeah, I think the last it wasn't on Kickstarter. It was on a thing called GameFound. But I think that is their last crowdfunding campaign. Wow. There were whispers that it was their last crowdfunding campaign.
Oh, because they're going to be self-published, like the rest of their games.
Oh no, I think there's no way they could do the game they do outside of crowdfunding. No, purely because the margins would be awful. You could not
risk overproducing this incredibly expensive
like the margins would just be terrible for them.
So,
but then I think they're not going to make too many bones content as well.
Oh, too many bones content.
Yes.
I saw the publishers making we're done making games.
We were scraping the barrel with the pop-up book, and where do we go from here? Really?
Yeah.
So you will actually get to compete
peak board
I think so. I think I'll get to compete it. I mean, I've bought and a very expensive box. If they make more content than can fit in that box, I am going to be furious.
No, they can't. How dare they?
Has anyone, so you're talking about premium components, and it's kind of linked to what you said. Stonemaier games tend to do quite a good job of making premium components.
They are high quality.
I remember opening Wingspan for the first time and feeling the rule book and feeling it like leathery and like high quality. I was like, they can do this. But I'm part of the Facebook group of a few of their like bigger titles, and the discussions that the customers have, or the people in the group have with Jamie, the owner of the designer, about these like boxes. They have so many opinions about so many like tiny things.
Wow.
But like it must be a real struggle to make a box that fits everything. Because honestly, if you go back, if anyone is part of those groups, it's really kind of wild to me to see how much detail people care about in these like storage boxes, whereas I just never get involved in that kind of stuff. And to me, it's just, hey, you could just pour everything in. As
long as everything's in its
pour everything in.
Yeah.
No, you're not even.
We are different people,
if there is a good,
you have to have a little bag for the tokens.
If there is a really nicely designed insert, and there are nicely designed inserts in that out there, if it makes it easy for me to put it away, yes. Then there's like a next level down where if they don't have that and they have some baggies, plastic bags, I will probably do some form of separating them. Other than that, but
what
if
does
the
that
game
mean? Just some in here, some in there,
some
whatever.
I'm having a mild panic attack.
Exactly.
Oh my god!
You can
he touches your games in the cafe.
He's just declared himself head of games now. I'm gonna have to go back and check out his CV. You didn't put this on there.
Again, we're not gatekeeping here. Like, you can be a nerd and you can put the games away.
Do whatever you like with your own games. Don't you dare do that to my games.
I think the head of news on Board Game Geek actually does some really like controversial things. If you follow him on Twitter, or even puts it on the Board Game Geek, where he literally cuts down original game boxes to make them smaller so they take up less space on his shelf. Wow. And I think that's like brave. I've applauded that, like, because even I won't go that far.
But they probably don't just throw all their tokens and biddies in.
Oh, they do actually. What? So I'm saying I'm not as bad as
I will confess I have encouraged people to do this with my own games purely so that I can nicely put them away the day after.
Oh, wow.
And just like take half an hour in the day and
I'm
just
going to redo it anyway. Yeah. Don't bother spending it. It will never be good enough.
Exactly.
So do whatever.
Oh, God. I worry for your children at this point.
Well, no, they're going to have the easy street. I'm just like, this is not a punishment at all. This is a treat for me.
Fair enough. Okay. So on that bombshell, let's go on to the next question. So one of the other questions that we had was, there's so many times in this where you're like having these conversations where we're talking about the scenario, and then some point you're like, well, that game's out of the window. Mm-hmm. Is there a game that you perhaps you couldn't shoehorn into a particular scenario? Is there something that you would have been like, this would have been great? Oh, apart from that one thing, anything you just discard and you're like, I want it to be mentioned.
I feel like there's probably always a couple of go-to games that we all have. in our pocket that we would just like to play ourselves. And like, that for me, there's 2 that I never managed to get into the show, but who's the same feature?
You got to pick one,
Gotta pick one. Is that fair though? Because I feel like there's a couple of times during this series where you've
do this again at the end of the next season.
Yeah, all right. Well, okay, I'll go with the only game that I've ever had upgraded bits to, and that is Quacks of Quedlinburg.
Okay.
Did that get actually?
No, we've had that one. We've certainly talked about it. I don't know if it was an official recommendation.
Recommended.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, this is showing my poor memory, so apologies, but I maybe should pick the other game. No, we've got it. The only game I've ever actually had upgraded bits for is Quack Squad. It's a bag building game, and essentially you're creating potions. We might have talked about this a lot before, but yeah, it's a really good game.
You get like a tree's worth of cardboard when you get
Quacks. Like a lot of things to punch out, and that's when you really hope that that's where they've spent the production quality of a board game. It's on those punch out bits.
Yeah, because you don't want to punch it out and then it rips.
Yeah, I've had that too many times. Actually, I would actually blacklist any publisher if I find they've cheaped out on that. Personally, not like I've never tell their names in public, but I've definitely internally gone, I'll never buy those games again.
I can think of Twitter is that
right
what was
now.
going on?
I've got a game in my brain that I'm not haunted by because a good 1/3 of the tokens have ripped in popping, and it's unacceptable.
It is unacceptable. If you're going to cheap out, like just don't do it on that. Like that is definitely most frustrating moment I've probably ever experienced in board games is in actually putting the board game, like popping them out and then just tearing and ruining a piece.
There's also unplayed and it's already like
ruined.
I'm gonna remember that.
The other thing is when you have like a structure that you've got to put together in cardboard. Like there are certain games where you have like 3D structures that have been put together, everything slots together, and when you see the cardboard is like cheap.
Yeah,
it's
you
like
just
you
know
know this isn't going to last. This has like 20 plays in it, and then we are.
But that
maybe
comes
getting rid.
slightly differently from we look at it from a sort of a board game perspective. Like each of these board games could be played 20, 30 times and then probably need a replacement or something to that effect. Whereas if it goes on your shelf, you'll probably be lucky to play it within 5 times in a given year.
I mean, that's
true.
That's the
from
thing.
the cafe's point of view, you have a lot more wear and tear.
We do.
You're going to get 20 plays in a month, whereas you might only get 20 plays in a year if you're lucky.
Because I bet, like Wingspan, made by Stone Mayer Games, very high quality product. All their components are very nice, but I imagine that bird feeder doesn't last very long in a cafe.
The cafe's copy is not anywhere; it's gone. So that is true.
Even the expensive ones aren't going to last like that kind of footfall.
Yeah, I blame all missing components on rum and coke. This is confession time. Like every time something's missing, it was a rum and coke based incident. Like,
interesting. I've not experienced that myself.
And it's like I shouldn't admit to passing the blame.
Are you talking? And presumably you're talking about spilling the drink, not people drinking too much and then doing something stupid with the
I've seen a lot of games because there's certain drinks that can be spilt on a game.
Yeah, but that's going to be so sticky.
Rum and coke.
No
cola is the evil ingredient there.
Yeah.
And the rum, like that can get quite sticky too.
Yeah.
It's also like missing pieces that get lost and stuff is one of the reasons why we don't actually have a vacuum is because we're like, no, we're going to have to sweep because you got to pick up those pieces that people are inevitably going to be dropping.
Yeah.
And I'm naming no names, but I have seen somebody throw a board game piece out thinking it was rubbish. I was like, no, do you not understand where we work? We rescue those. We protect our game pieces here.
It goes into the box of pieces that no one quite knows. And occasionally you'll get a guru who'll come along and be like, oh, I know exactly what that is. My niche knowledge has once again saved the day.
The wildest thing, though, is that you end up having pieces in there that don't belong to any games that Chance Encounters has ever owned.
Yeah.
It's somebody's brought their own game in and lost it. And I feel really bad for them.
Terrible.
It's like it's incomplete and they'll never figure out that they lost it here. They think we'd have thrown it out.
We had Quacks. Did you have a game that you would have wanted?
Yeah, like there's one game that just isn't going to fit into any. Like I will eat my non-existent hat if this ever is suitable for anyone's situation. But there's a game that I got obsessed with early this year, which is called Cosmic Frog.
Okay.
It's bonkers. It's so nuts. And it's by this company called Devious Weasel and mad person called Jim Felly, who makes very strange games, one of which has been on my list of things to play for as long as we've opened the cafe. But Cosmic Frog, you are 2 mile high ethereal frogs in space. And it is your job to bounce around the cosmos, eat bits of planet, vomit them up into your vault, and punch each other into different dimensions.
Wow.
It's unbelievably good.
Wait, what's the win condition on that?
Yeah, like the win condition, weirdly, is a tiny puzzle that feels like it's from a different game. Like the whole thing is bonkers nuts, but it kind of just plays like it plays in a way that I've never seen a board game play, which is like a full prog rock album.
Wow.
It just feels, and the art kind of matches that as well. It's glorious art that's kind of like 70s psychedelia.
Yeah.
It's chaos management is its kind of genre of game, which is basically like anything can happen, react to it. So AP is out of the window, analysis paralysis out of the window. You can't really plan your turn because God knows what's going to happen. You don't know when your turns are going to be. Like the strangest mechanic of all of them in there is how you take your turns.
Okay.
So you get 5 cards per player, put them in the deck, shuffle them up, and then that is your player turns. So you could have 3 turns in a row out of your 5 and then be waiting for the last 2 turns of the round to take your final 2 actions. Or you could have like 1 action and then everyone else goes for ages and you just sweep in at the end with 4 in a row. It's a very strange thing to have to react to and deal with. But I kind of love that it's something that's so new and unique and kind of gaming. It's I mean, it looks brilliant as well. It's a really nice looking game.
I feel like you should get a hat just in case. Something like that could. It doesn't sound like unrealistically suggestive.
I think the only thing that might put me off recommending it is A, the hat thing, now that I've said it, and B, that everything in this game is kind of recognized. Like, there's everything in this game could have a sensible name.
Right.
Nothing in this game has a sensible name. You are jumping from the shard to the ether. There's a shard complexity track, and like it's.
Don't you vomit stuff?
You vomit, and nothing has a sensible name when it absolutely could, and that's kind of the joy of it. That I would spend so long trying to explain this game and kind of what everything is that I think it would just be not worth it.
You need to see it for yourself by the sounds of it. It's like a visual experience.
Oh, absolutely. It's a visceral experience.
Fair play. Wow. Is there anything that you've thought, hey, this would be a really good game?
I mean, I have a game that I love, but I've only played it twice and I want to play it more, and I'm never going to suggest it because it's never going to be appropriate because it's just for big wargame nerds like me. It's a big box. It's called Conflict of Heroes by Academy Games, and it's a World War II Eastern Front game, Germans versus Russians, and it's like a grid of hexes. And you can either play the scenarios in the book or you can make your own forces and do like a custom scenario. And I find it fascinating because it's a proper World War II like war game, like hex and chit style, but without the problem that those games usually have of being absurdly complicated. You know, like normally those games will take like 6 hours and they'll have a big thick rule book, and you'll have to worry about like, do they have enough supplies, and what's the weather like, and all these kind of like nitty gritty factors that some people love, but I don't want that. And the thing I love about this game, unfortunately, that makes it really hard for an experienced player to play with someone who's not played before, is the activation system. I don't do like one of my guys, or I don't do all of my guys and you do all of your guys like in some games, and we don't even alternate. You take alternating actions, but when you move a unit, you've got 7 action points, right? And you can spend as many as it takes, like depending on, like if you're moving through dense terrain, it might take more action points to move through it, or if you're firing, that'll take more action points. You take a single action, like you move a hex, or you shoot, or you do whatever, and then it's the other person's go. They do their thing, and then I come back. And now at this point, I have to keep using that same unit I've activated, or I can flip it over and go, right, these guys are done. I'm going to activate someone else. But now I can never go back to that unit that's exhausted. And that's a really unusual mechanic in a war game where it's the best way to describe it. You can start pushing on like one side with a unit, and if your enemy then pushes on another flank, you've got this really difficult choice of, do I complete the assault that I've been lining up and preparing for and kind of let him have his way on the other side, or am I going to stop myself short and react to what he's doing? So the strategy is quite a lot like Go. I don't know if you've ever played the classic game Go, where you feel like maybe you're winning or you're losing on one side, but you just kind of have to abandon it and move on to another side. And you're kind of juggling a lot of balls. You're like, you've got 3 or 4 mini conflicts going on, and you're trying to bait your opponent into activating something, and then bait him into then exhausting it before he's finished using all of his actions. Very strategic. I really enjoy it. I'm never going to find someone else who really wants to play it or learn it because it's quite complicated, and I'm never going to suggest it to anyone on the podcast, but I think it's a great game that deserves a shout out.
Basically, if you were the guest, you could recommend it to you. Is that what we're talking about?
Exactly. It's just a very niche technical war game.
Right.
It's just very well made.
Also, it sounds like very unrealistic war, because they're like, oh, we're going to go and attack this, but hold on, stop right there, because I need to use your energy to push these guys over here.
Yeah, I think it's like any war game. It's a little abstract. It's not a simulation. Because, like simulation war games are, they take a long time. They're very complicated.
It's that very famously long one, Campaign for North Africa.
Yeah,
which takes like days to play.
Yeah. No, I need to be able to finish a game in an evening.
Yeah,
otherwise it's not for me.
I mean, there definitely are games where it's a case of you leave the table and it has to be set up, and then you're just like coming back to it over the weekend or whatever else it would be. So the game that I really wanted to shoehorn in because I thought it would appeal was when we had Lydia on. I'd done a little bit of research and found out that there was a game called Downforce. Now, I have played Downforce before, but the key thing is not the game per se. Downforce is a sort of like a Formula One like racing game where you're kind of bidding on which car you want to win, and then also guessing which one is going to win, and then you're playing cards to try and make your car win. So there's a lot of stuff going on there, but it's actually the thematics behind it. There is a really random but interesting crossover with Downforce and, of all things, Mario Kart Monopoly. And basically, they created these little like player tokens for Mario Kart Monopoly, and they were, funnily enough, Mario Kart. Now, I can't get a hold of them. They're either really expensive or they're just out of stock now. I don't know why they haven't been producing them, but they're the exact right size, and I think the artwork is also pretty much perfect. So you can mix the two together. You play a game of Downforce, but like Mario Kart Grand Prix. I thought Lydia would be really, really into that. Yeah. And in general, like I know there's a huge thing of Mario Kart in Yogs, so I thought it would be a great one to go. And then you know what? We'll bring the swingers in there. And I was like, you know what? Maybe Mario Kart Grand Prix Downfall would, it probably wasn't going to work.
It does go up to a high number of players, though. I think you could have done that. I think.
Maybe
it is kind of funny. I think we mentioned Grail game. I don't know if it was on this thing. It's like the game that you really want to get, but it's so difficult to find. And I just think it's hilarious that Richards is Monopoly.
I think you can get. So they had like these booster packs basically, and you try getting like a Bowser Mario Kart booster pack is unheard of nowadays. So I'm hoping that someone will hear me and they'll be like, shit, we need to reprint this like anybody's business.
I didn't know this was a request line. This is right. Hey, let me have a think.
If anybody wants to send them in. Okay, well, that kind of covers off the kind of some of the board game questions that we had.
I did have one thing that we maybe didn't mention at all during the whole series. It was a little game called Twilight Imperium.
Oh,
What is this game? We've been talking about it a lot. Even I've said it. I know what it is.
I think I'm going to have to research it. Well, maybe we'll talk about it on another podcast.
It might come up again.
Oh my God, I was worried. I was worried for a minute then. No one was going to mention it.
What was the third question?
Board game turn-offs.
Yes. So one of the other questions that we had was one that we kind of ask of the guests that come in. It gives us a little bit of direction as to where we should go. But board game turn-offs, anything that either mechanically or thematically that you don't think you like, is anyone have very strong opinions on that?
I've got one. I have a strong dislike for, this is broad, right? For any mechanic that means that that makes it hard for you to plan your turn while other people are playing. So this might be something as simple as you draw cards at the start of your turn.
Mm-hmm.
Terrible game design, right? Because if you draw cards at the end of your turn instead, you've then got everyone else's goes to think about these new elements and to plan it out. So to everyone out there who makes you draw cards at the start of your turn, please just shift it. It honestly, all it does is make the game better. There's no downsides.
Yeah.
Oh my God. But also with games with maybe there's a limited market in play, that maybe you've planned your whole turn out and then someone just before your go buys the thing you were going to buy.
Yeah.
And now you've got to reorganize your entire strategy. I mean, I'm not saying that all games that do that are bad. There are obviously many excellent games with a limited market, but it does irritate me a lot.
I feel like if it's a pivotal point where you're just like, okay, I'm like, you're just staring at the card and then someone's like, oh, I know what you're going for. Yeah.
So yeah, I think board games take a long time, especially with multiple players. Playing a 5-player game that's fairly complicated, it's going to take 3+ hours. And I don't want to personally add to everyone's waiting time by having to go, oh, I've no idea what I'm going to do now because something unexpected has happened and I'm going to sit here for 10 minutes.
I mean,
I feel like there's a ratio of how long your turn takes to complete and, how long you have to think about it, that there is a sweet spot for sure. I'm absolutely with you that if it's a big game, you need to have some time to plan. But if your turn's going to take a short amount of time, even in a long game, if it's just a one thing to do, I kind of think you're going to, I don't mind that so much. But yeah, it's just how quick your actions are, I guess.
It's strange as I've kind of got a bit older or maybe just more into board games, but I've realized that the socializing element of it is the bit that I most enjoy. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love a strategy when it really comes off and it all comes together. But I think there is an element of, Dickie can probably attest to this, but when we started playing games, analysis paralysis, which is where you literally are
overwhelmed with decision.
Yeah, you've got so many options. You're just like, I don't know what to do. I would probably have been in the category of maybe too much AP, as it were, analysis paralysis. I have tried to improve. Is generally something, but games as you're describing there, those are my worst nightmare as well, where I just get into that position where I'm like, I can't even try and help myself because all I can do is sit there, and then you're just confronted with this sort of rabbit in headlight situation where you're just like, oh, and everybody else is like, should I just go get a coffee? Maybe I'll go to the loo. And then you come back and they're like, are you done, Richard? And I'm like,
yeah, I definitely can attest to some of those. I mean, we've put you in some pretty awful situations over the years where if we knew this was going to happen, why did we make you play this game?
One of those games being 1830, I think we played.
1830 is the one that I'm thinking of, yes.
I think I lost that game in turn 2.
And we were there for, it was at least 8 hours.
I think it was actually 13 hours we were there for.
Oh my God.
Because we started at something like 9
right.
and then it was just it was a long game. It's a game I would probably play again, to all people's surprise there. But I literally didn't understand a fundamental rule at the beginning. I made a choice that I lost the game.
That is kind of leading into something. One of the several things that I find really annoying in games is
one thing, Russ. One thing.
Oh. I don't want to use the same one you use. That's not good content. Okay, I would say games that require you to be put in a position where you have to lie. Without anything to go on. So I think we've actually talked about them. You talked about them actually in the last episode, but games, social deduction games, but specifically ones where you have nothing to go on. So Chameleon would be a good example if you are the person who has to use the clue word, but you're the first person to go and you're also the chameleon that has no idea what the actual word is. a fake artist goes to New York. Like I said, if you're the first one, Spyfall, we mentioned that on the previous episode. That one, if you're the first person to ask a question, it's just scary. And I think that I don't want to say it's bad design, but it is sketchy. It's on the edge.
The problem is with that design, like, what are you going to do? Say, oh, it's not the first person. Like, we can guarantee it's not. Like, at that point, then you've got information. So you kind of almost just have to play it going, oh, it could be the first person. But if they come up with anything that's reasonable, then you know it's not them.
I think those games in particular require you to have a level of confidence in your ability to deceive that maybe I don't have, and that's where I stumble. Although I will say that one game I played is not the kind of it's a game called One Night Revolution, and it's a hidden role game. You know, everyone's got like a secret role and like is on a specific kind of team. And I did the best deception I've ever done in my life by lying about misunderstanding my role in the game when I got caught out. And everyone was like, "Oh, it's fine. Don't worry. We'll carry on." But yeah, you know, maybe should have told you that. And then at the end, I was like, "Oh yeah, I actually knew. I actually knew the rule the whole time. That was my way of getting out of it." And everybody was just so surprised. I think it's because I'm just generally bad at lying and deception games. That everyone was like, What the heck? Like
bridges were burned that night.
Yeah, really, really badly, and I still feel really bad about it because it was one of my best friends as well, and he didn't know.
Would you like to apologize?
I would like to formally apologize for everyone involved in that game. I've never done it since because it seems really, really cruel. And there was a whole debate after we finished the game whether that was allowed. So like, there's still not been any situation.
Where you're like, the rulebook didn't say it.
Yeah,
it didn't say you couldn't.
Yeah, it didn't say you couldn't lie about understanding the rules of the game. I mean, it is a deception game.
Yeah,
so,
that is tricky. Where are the boundaries of deception?
It's like the cheating in Monopoly. It's like people, you know, expect it, you know, about stealing money from the bank or making up their own rules, but, you know, it doesn't make it okay, does it?
Do you have anything in particular?
Yeah. So I like a catch-up mechanic. What I don't like is a get the leader mechanic. Not naming any names apart from, you know, Countryman. I hate it because it just makes the game go on for so much longer than it needs to. I think Munchkin is the worst perpetrator of this. You know, that it doesn't let the game end. You know, that's the thing that really, really turns me off a game, is something that I've been playing. I've known the result for a long time, or that a result that I feel is just is kind of taken away because that's how the game works.
Yeah, because you're just waiting. You know. Whoever wins is the person who tries to win after everyone's used up all their stop you cards.
Yeah.
You know, and it might, who knows who that will be at this point, because you don't know how many block cards there are.
At that point, it's like everybody's on level 9, like the very final one, and we'll just all play the stop you cards, and that's the same thing as playing the game.
I tend to be quite forgiving of mechanics of games, but games like that, where I could have been playing a different game at this point. This game was over like half an hour ago, and there is a game that could be fitted into this slot, you know.
Now we're waiting for the stars to align of everyone to run out of cards.
Yeah, exactly. You're going through the motions and you've got no agency as a player. That winds me up.
Essentially, like, it turns the winning down to luck at the end of the day, doesn't it?
Exactly,
There's a game that I really like, but it's terrible for that, called Fujiflush, and it's just a number card game where, you know, you're trying to get rid of all of your cards, but when you are down to the last card, if you just have to play it in front of you and just hope that like I won't get into the specifics of the game because it doesn't actually matter, but you essentially play the card and is it the high enough card to win this time? No, okay, you've not won this time. And so literally that happens. And so whether you win is just whether you draw the right card at the end. And it just means it makes a really good game just good. It takes it away from it.
Yeah, well, it's just like you say, removing player agency. That's the killer for me. Like, I've read a book about games design, and one of the things they said was key to enjoying a game was being presented with a situation, deciding how you're going to respond to it, and then getting the feedback of how your response affected the situation. And and then you loop back around. And the more times you can complete that loop in a given time frame is effectively how much you're engaged and enjoying that game.
Yeah.
And when you're reaching that point in like Munchkin or Uno or any of these games where you're actually just waiting till everything lines up for you, like you've got zero. That you're not doing that at all. You're not making any decisions. You're just waiting to see what happens.
Going through the rote, like the rote, as it were.
Just on rails, kind of waiting for the end. Aren't we all?
So the very final
I play games to get away from my life.
It's true. The final question that we'd come up with was a question about. So obviously we've had a lot of guests. We've got a lot of Yogs guests that have come on. All friends of Ben, at least I hope so.
That's what they're paid for.
But we will be looking at not just Yogs guests, but we'll be looking at lots of other guests as well. So in that spirit, are there anybody that you would love to get on the podcast that, these are dreamy people that you'd want to get on? Maybe just to have a conversation with them. Maybe just to whatever else that would go on there, but on the podcast, anyone that would make sense. So, have you got like a white whale out there that you're like, ooh, anyone?
I'd like to. I don't know if they're into board games. I assume they are based on other stuff that they're into. But I think it'd be really fun to get Simon Pegg on the show.
Yes.
Do you remember he's done a lot of nerdy stuff? I loved Spaced, like quite an old sitcom now that he like sort of made him big. I love the films he's done with Edgar Wright. He's written some Star Trek stuff that's good, and he seems like a nice, funny, nerdy guy. I think we'd have a really fun chat with him.
Been in Star Wars as well, right?
Okay, yeah, he was like quarter portion.
Yeah.
Wait, is that in the one that I've seen?
Yeah,
that is in the one that you've seen.
I mean,
Episode 7.
Unless you knew it was him, you would not know it was him.
No.
He's in like a lot of makeup as a massive alien guy.
Yeah.
He's well known as like basically a mega nerd.
Yeah.
He's just made super big a thing. Like, yes, absolutely. Now you're saying that.
And he's from around here. He's from down the road.
Oh, really?
From Bristol. Yeah. Do you remember in what's it called? In Hot Fuzz, where they have the shootout in the supermarket?
Yeah.
That is recreating the town he grew up in. And I think it's either he or Edgar Wright. That was like their job when they were at college. They had a part-time job at the like Safeway down the road.
Oh my god!
And that's why they filmed it, because they grew up in this little Somerset town in this like little supermarket. Was where they worked, and I think that just ties in perfectly. Local. I mean, I'm sure he probably lives in LA now or something. But come back to your roots. Talk to some nerds in Somerset.
If you ever down this way.
I have. They come as a duo. You'll understand what I say, but like I
you
know
can
for a fact. I guess you've learned. I don't like listening to rules. One comes with the other anyway. But,
You're just throwing all of the chips onto the table now.
I just don't like rules. All right, like, this board game thing is a lie. No, Trey Parker and Matt Stone. I think I've said the names the right way around. They are known to be board game fans. They actually managed to get some board games into the South Park show that they make, and they have been. I know that Board Game Geek have like some people in Board Game Geek have chatted to them on a few occasions, and they seem like really fun people who are really talented. They are huge nerds. And I just think they'd have a lot of interesting things to say, and also because of what they do for a living, I imagine the scenario that they come up with would be worth it alone, just to see what kind of nonsense they've come up with.
They're great at making up games as well. Basketball is one of my favorite films ever. It's great.
Yeah,
I mean, it's 18-year-old Dickie's favorite film ever. There we are.
I mean, the World of Warcraft South Park episode was probably one of the most quotable episodes based on my interests. It's always been popping around.
They know what they like, and they do it really well, and they're just funny as well. I just imagine I don't know where we'd have the extra seat for them though. Maybe they can just share.
Well, we've got a head of the table. I don't know who would be there. It's just, maybe we'll just have the both of them there. Who knows?
I'm a big Leicester City fan, and any Leicester City player would be amazing. But the person that I'd really want, I think, at the minute, would be Alex Horn. I think I'm a big Taskmaster fan. Great coming up with like crazy scenarios and interesting tasks. I think the idea there would be great. Like just to say that I've kind of had my own task and had a crack at it would be great, because based on this, I'm not getting on Taskmaster anytime soon. But I love the idea of what he might come up with. I think really interesting.
He'd have a fun
guy.
scenario for sure.
Exactly, yeah. Something kind of weirdly mechanical, or kind of, I'd like to jump through his hoops, is what I'm saying.
We've had
Not like that.
I was going to say, you've got a crush now. Fair enough.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, the one that I have a bit of a man crush on is Henry Cavill. Like,
Ooh, good
mega
choice.
nerd. We were talking about
So
nerdy
mega
earlier on, but I think
Yeah.
we are definitely over.
Oh yeah,
Like,
nerdiest guy
usurped
ever.
by him.
I mean,
Literal Superman.
exactly. So like, you know what I want to be? I want to be that comic book, but like hero. I'm going to be that. And he does everything that we're like super into, from The Witcher, like even stuff from like the Tudors is really interesting. And like he's been around the block, knows loads of Games Workshop, Warhammer
He's
stuff.
into his Warhammer. He's into his Brandon Sanderson novels. He's been talking about. Like, he is not at all ashamed to wear his nerd badge with pride.
And he represents I think it was all about like PC Master Race, which is a bit of a weird one, but it's essentially a subreddit where it talks about being on PC is a really good thing. And he became a bit of the poster boy. We've got him and Terry Brooks as well. Terry Brooks?
Terry
Crews?
Terry Crews. Why? Terry Crews. Terry Brooks is different, but no, Terry Crews is also on there as like the poster boys for like nerdism and like in terms of PC, and those would be so. It'd be lovely. My wife would also probably leave me.
Isn't he like super tall as well? He'd be like towering over us. Like,
It's all right, we'll just get him a low chair.
Emasculate him. Just to
make us all feel better.
Yeah.
He can be on a little 1-foot high chair. It'll be fine. He'll understand.
Is he going to play a Space Marine now as well in whatever the new?
He can play whatever he wants. To be fair,
Yeah, I think if they can afford him, if they can get a big enough budget to do a Warhammer film, I'm sure he would love to be
The God Emperor.
Oh my god!
Sure, why not?
Surely that would be yours, the Bemperor, though.
The Bemperor. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like if the Bemperor, is ordering around Henry Cavill as my minion, I don't know if that'll play well on screen. Do
you think
something about that doesn't feel right?
If you get enough money, you can make it happen.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. So donate now.
We're launching a GoFundMe. GoFund Ben.
Yeah, I'm gonna do a Kickstarter, stretch goal, Henry Cavill. We'll be fine.
I feel like you wouldn't have to do too much CGI work as well to get the scale right between like Emperor and then like 8-foot Space Marine. Yeah, the scale would be on. But yeah, I'm particularly jealous of Henry Cavill because he's had his moustache photoshopped off. I have no idea what I'd look like underneath my moustache. He knows.
Oh, he knows.
He knows.
He then had the confidence to shave it off once he saw what it looked like.
I've had this moustache for like 10 years now, and I am terrified of shaving it off because I will look, like an anemic child.
Who knows what's under there?
It's also worth noting that I've just realized it kind of comes as a pair because unlike Trey, Henry Cavill brings his dog.
He does. And
Why?
he's got a beautiful dog.
I think it's an Akita, and it is just if you follow him on Instagram, then it is gorgeous. It's so cute and so very well trained, unlike my dog.
Oh, your dog does some cool tricks though.
It does cool tricks, but
that's amazing. Like it puts your and it rests his chin on your between your forefinger and your thumb. It's really adorable.
Dread to think what Henry Cavill would think if he met my dogs, like agents of chaos. Yeah, it is weird how much my dogs are like your cats.
Yeah,
I've got one tiny black diva of a dog and one big white lovable fluffy idiot, and it kind of they
one
coincide.
One you're like, here, my guests, you can pet this one dog, this one cat, because they're the sociable ones, and then the other one that's like, ignore that one, please.
Don't touch it; it will bite you.
Well, that covers most of the questions that I had. So I think all that's actually left is to finally crown our series Titan of Board Games. Maybe we should figure out a theme tune going on there.
I like the chaos of it.
Add the theme tune in post.
Just mute
That way.
all our mics.
Yeah, like that way we won't get against copyright.
That's true. That's true.
Try and figure out which of those songs.
So I think the official tally came to about 10,004 points, if I was right. So, Dickie, you have become the Titan of board games.
Well
this
deserved.
Is your,
Well
this is
done.
your little trophy.
Thank you.
I hate to think what would have happened if you'd been on every episode.
Yeah. I did actually manage to win one. Dickie wasn't on it. Who knows? They had to choose someone else. But no, well done. I think it certainly makes sense. Your recommendation prowess has been very good. Would you like to say any words? Thank the family. Do your Oscar speech.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to thank my partner, my dogs, Optimus Prime, all you fellow nerds out there. Yeah, thank you, and thank you guys as well. This has been great fun. It's been a load of fun to do, and I can't wait for more.
Yes.
Well, there will be more. We've got the whole new season coming up. New guests, new games, new scenarios.
And when we know it, we will let you guys know. Now, on the scenario front, if you have anything, you've heard multiple scenarios going on. But if there's anything that you're like, hey, you know what? This would make a good one. By all means, submit your scenarios, and who knows, we might actually do it ourselves.
Yeah.
So, put those in the comment below. If you're following on any of the podcasts, please give us a review.
Yeah, leave a 5-star review and put your ideas for scenarios in the review.
There you go.
We're on podcast and we're also on YouTube, so that's an easy way
We
to
are.
do it.
You can also reach out to Chance Encounters on all the socials.
Yeah.
May as well.
And we will definitely
I'll
respond. But thank you so much for following along. It's been a great season. It's been a blast. Thank you, Ben.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Russ, Dickie, the one with something to show from this whole scenario. But yes, please let us know. Be in contact, and we will catch you for the next season.
See you in season 2.
See you in season 2.
Bye.